listeners. So glad you could join us for today's episode. These weekly episodes also serve as weekly meetings for our very own true crime cult.
That's right. We started a cult so that all of our spooky friends have a place to go for non-stop creepy content. But never fear, you've landed in the cult with all the cute matching outfits and none of the police standoffs.
In case you're just joining us for the very first time today, allow us to introduce ourselves. I'm Angelina, and I'm here with my bewitching BFF, Aurora. How's your week going?
It is a little slow because if you can't hear in my voice, I am sick. So I apologize in advance if I sound a little off, y'all, but pushing through. How about you?
Feeling good. I found the perfect semi-retired handyman neighbor to help me out with some things around my house, and I'm making some shit happen that has been on the to-do list for 2 years.
Amazing.
So I'm getting a new light fixture where I have a god-awful light fixture that this place came with. I've done a little bit of painting. So I'm going to have some cool new things going on. Louis told me, so we don't do surprises, I guess, for the holidays and birthdays and stuff. We just sort of are like, how about we do this? And like we discuss our presents. So he was like, what if I give you a Christmas present of, this probably sounds not so exciting to people, but doing the kitchen backsplash. And I'm like,
sounds very exciting.
It's exciting for me. So I'm really excited to carry that out too. And then I'll have, I guess, a bunch of cool pics to share for those that care about shit like home decor.
I do very much care about home decor, and I cannot wait. It's fun to imagine yourself as an honorary cult member as you listen to our show, but if you'd like to make it official, you can join the MMN commune on Patreon. You'll find us at patreon.com/murdernews. To show you how much we appreciate your monthly pledge, we'll give you a shout out on the show, we'll send you your very own adorable baby goat, and you'll have exclusive access to our special patron-only content.
We're mixing things up this month with an exclusive monster watch party. So keep your eyes peeled on our Patreon page for details on how to connect, and let's binge the latest spooky offering together this weekend.
And to ensure we keep on delivering the true crime content you crave, we've been passing around a listener survey. Share your thoughts with us to help us carve out a little corner on Patreon where you actually want to hang out and to give us some insight about what you've been enjoying most about the podcast. You can find the listener survey in your email inbox if you've shared your contact info with us, or you can find it posted on our social media pages. You can head to murdernews.news/survey and fill one out right now. We appreciate your feedback.
And we want to give a shout out to William, who emailed us after listening to last week's episode about the Dardenne family massacre. William said, quote, "Just listened for the first time, and this was a horrible and sad tragedy. I am very impressed how you presented the episode in a top-notch and professional manner, but also showing care and concern for the victims. I will be a regular listener from now on. Thanks so much, William."
Yeah, thank you so much. That's so sweet. We really love the feedback, whether it's good or bad, and welcome to the cult.
Yeah, happy to have you.
We also want to give a shout out to Jeff and Julie in Austin, Texas. Jeff is a close friend of mine for many years from when I used to live in Austin. And he just wrote to me the other day letting me know that him and his wife, Julie, have been listening to the podcast and how much they've been enjoying it.
Aww.
And it's just so cute when you have a friend from the past that, maybe through time and distance you haven't connected with in a while. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for listening. And let's get drinks in Austin sometime. Maybe for CrimeCon here this summer.
Yeah. And it's that time of year again. We'll be taking a short break from releasing new podcast episodes in December. You can expect to see some full-length episode drops from some choice Darkcast podcasts in our feed, and we'll still have some regular and holiday content on social media. We hope you have a comfy and cozy holiday season, and we'll be back in 2023 with all sorts of new stuff.
Speaking of new stuff and holidays, we've got a whole new line of murder merch up for sale on our new online shop, which you can find at murdernews.news/shop. Get your holiday shopping started today, this Friday, with our Black Friday sale. Find something for every true crime lover on your list and get 15% off with promo code DARKDAYS until midnight tonight.
Let's kick things off with some of the true crime stories that made headlines this week.
22-year-old Anderson Lee Aldrich faces 5 counts of homicide and 5 charges of committing a bias-motivated crime causing bodily injury after an attack on Club Q, a gay nightclub in Colorado Springs, last Saturday night. The shooting attack was brought to a halt as 2 club patrons pinned Aldrich down and hit him with his own gun. A handgun, several rounds of ammunition, and an AR-15 style semi-automatic weapon were recovered at the scene. Victims of the attack have been identified as 35-year-old Ashley Paw, 28-year-old Daniel Ashton, 40-year-old Kelly Loving, 22-year-old Raymond Green Vance, and 38-year-old Derek Rump. Additionally, 18 club patrons were injured, 13 of which were hospitalized. The suspect is expected to make his first court appearance after he is released from the hospital, where he's being treated for unspecified injuries. And one other note on this, there have been some, great heroic stories making the rounds about the Army vet who actually tackled him and got him to the ground and got the gun away from him, which is just so inspiring to hear. He was at the club with his family, so brave. And in interviews with him, he had mentioned that a drag queen had taken her high-heeled shoes and had helped hold him down, hold down the perpetrator using that, which I thought was a really interesting story. But one of the victims at the nightclub has actually corrected that story. It was not a drag queen. It was a trans woman. And of course, that narrative can be quite offensive when that is confused. And the survivor wanted to clarify that she does not blame the man who was the hero and took this man down for confusing that fact. She just wanted to set the record straight because this was clearly such a horrific attack, which had a background in transphobia with, I believe it was 2 or 3 trans people were killed out of the 5. The day after, I think the day after Trans Day of Remembrance. So it's really important to set that straight. So if you have seen that story circulating around about the woman in heels.
A drag queen.
Yeah, it is a trans woman and it's still badass. And the survivor posted still absolutely a queen for what she did, just not a drag queen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. A former nurse who worked at a hospital in North Carolina has been charged in the deaths of 2 patients after injecting both with lethal doses of insulin. 47-year-old registered nurse Jonathan Howard Hayes faces 2 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder and is being held without bond. Authorities say Hayes administered a near-fatal dose to Pamela Little on December 1st, 2021, but she survived. On January 5th, 2022, he gave a lethal dose to Gwen Crawford, who passed away 3 days later. On January 22nd, a lethal dose was administered to Vicky Lingerfeld, who died 5 days later. Winston-Salem police found probable cause to charge Hayes after consulting with the chief medical examiner. Forsyth County DA Jim O'Neill describes Hayes as a rogue nurse and says evidence suggests he acted alone. Quote, Jonathan Hayes has forfeited the honor of being called a nurse, O'Neill announced. From this day forward, he will be known as a defendant. Anyone who believes they have been impacted by Hayes is advised to call a dedicated phone line set up by police at 336-757-0357.
We'll be right back after a quick commercial break from one of our fellow Darkcast podcasts.
Hello, and welcome to Cause of Death. My name is Jackie Moranti. I've been studying infectious disease for 14 years in various research settings. I have a Bachelor's of Science from Colorado State University in microbiology, immunology, and virology. I've worked with diseases like tuberculosis, SARS-1, and SARS-CoV-2, better known as COVID-19. And I've worked with EHV1. It's my feeling that if we look back at the pandemics of the past, we may be able to better handle the pandemics of the future. The problem is, we have to learn our lessons first. Come along with me while I tell you about the pandemics, the epidemics, and the outbreaks, and how we never seem to learn our lesson.
And we're back.
Before we dig in, we want to offer a quick disclaimer. Though we joke about forming a true crime cult, that is not to diminish the severity of actual cult activity, and we want you to know that we take the cases we're discussing very seriously.
We want to deliver each story with the utmost respect to victims and anyone involved. If you feel we've missed the mark, you don't like our tone, or if you notice we've gotten any details wrong, let us know with a quick email to murdermurdernews@gmail.com and we'll make it right.
Some specific trigger warnings for this episode include child murder, graphic descriptions of violence, and sexual assault. If any of those are particularly sensitive subjects for you, feel free to skip this one and listen to one of our other episodes instead. The Highway of Tears is Canada's answer to the Texas killing fields. In our 34th episode, which came out in October of 2021, we covered the Texas killing fields, which is a 25-acre patch of land located just off the I-45 in League City, Texas, which appears to have been the dumping ground of multiple serial killers. Since the early 1970s, the remains of 30 murder victims have been found at the site, mostly belonging to women and girls. It has been suggested that a number of victims were also killed on site. As Amy Cannon-Mann, director of the film Texas Killing Fields, has described the area, if you yelled, no one would necessarily hear you. And if you ran, there wouldn't necessarily be anywhere to go. Few of the murders have been solved. Some of the bodies were discovered long after being buried or otherwise hidden on the patch of land. Some speculate that several missing persons in the surrounding area may actually have been murdered, their bodies well hidden in the Texas killing fields. It has proven to be quite a feat to determine which cases are connected and to investigate the drifters and long-haul truck drivers who regularly cross the I-45 or pass through League City.
Canada's Highway of Tears is a 725-kilometer stretch of Highway 16 between Prince George and Prince Rupert, British Columbia. For those who aren't familiar with the area, this is central BC, a several hours drive north of Vancouver. Pull off Highway 16 at any exit between Prince George and Prince Rupert, and you'll find yourself in an incredibly remote and secluded spot. Soft soil and high populations of carnivorous scavengers appeal to drifters with secrets to bury. It's difficult to estimate how many have fallen prey to murderers and serial killers who have made this corner of British Columbia their hunting grounds, assuming there are still remains to be discovered and bodies that may never be found. The RCMP, or Royal Canadian Mounted Police, sometimes called Mounties, are responsible for enforcing federal legislation in Canada, but also deliver local police services to rural areas like the one encompassing the Highway of Tears in BC. The RCMP has tallied the murders and disappearances connected to the Highway of Tears to 18, similarly dating back to the early 1970s. Being that Indigenous women and girls are disproportionately affected by violent crime and are more likely to be reported missing or turn up murdered than other demographics, Aboriginal organizers say 18 is an underestimation. They suggest the victim count likely exceeds 40. Wikipedia lists the number of victims associated with the Highway of Tears as 80 plus.
A number of factors contribute to the ongoing issue of unsolved murders and under-investigated disappearances in the rural area, including widespread poverty, leading to low rates of car ownership and mobility, which drives many to hitchhiking to get around. An epidemic of drug abuse and a resulting uptick in young women resorting to sex work has contributed to a number of disappearances being overlooked by authorities who believe that being poor, drug addicted, or involved in sex work somehow makes human beings matter less. Folks living within the Canadian Indian residential school system, which ran until the late 1990s, or living in situations of domestic violence, are also more likely to hitchhike in an attempt to run away, and their disappearances are less likely to be taken seriously or be adequately investigated by law enforcement. Critics and activists cite systemic racism as the reason for the lack of results arising from the investigation into the Highway of Tears, bordered by 23 First Nations communities. Systemic racism is also indicated as a barrier in locating Indigenous women missing from the Vancouver area, and an explanation as to why pig farmer Willie Pickton, one of the most prolific serial killers of all time, got away with his crimes for so long.
Despite the fact that the murders and disappearances connected with the Highway of Tears date back to the early 1970s, a dedicated RCMP task force was not launched until 2005. The first of the disappearances to receive media coverage from publications like the Globe and Mail, the Vancouver Sun, and the Edmonton Journal was that of Nicole Hoare. Nicole was a 24-year-old white woman who was last seen at a gas station on the outskirts of Prince George in 2002. Nicole's body has never been located, but her disappearance is still being actively investigated today. Gladys Radek, a Native activist and family member of Highway of Tears victim Tamara Chipman, believes that if it weren't for Hoare, the police would have invested less effort in investigating cases, and the media would have done little, if anything, to inform the public about the tragedies along the road. RCMP Sergeant Wayne Clary does not believe they'll ever be able to solve all of the cases connected to the Highway of Tears, and has said it will be, quote, people in the communities that are going to solve these crimes. We're counting on any monsters living in British Columbia to do your part. At the moment, the RCMP says they have many persons of interest tied to a number of the cases, but not enough evidence to lay charges. However, a number of people have been convicted in connection with the highway cases over the years, including serial killers Brian Peter Arp, Edward Dennis Isaac, and Cody Legebokoff, whose crimes we'll be focusing on today.
Today's story is a request from Mimi, a valued member of the Monster Commune's British Columbia chapter. Thank you, Mimi, for the suggestion, and we hope we do the story justice. Our sources for today include podcasts like Canadian True Crime and Human Monsters, The National Post, Maclean's Magazine, APTN National News, and the Prince George Citizen. For a complete list of sources for today's episode, check out the show notes. Cody Legebokoff is often miscredited as Canada's youngest serial killer. That title actually goes to Peter Woodcock, who murdered 3 young children in Toronto in the late 1950s and then later killed a fellow inmate in prison. Woodcock was a diagnosed psychopath who committed his first murder at the age of 17. Cody Legebokoff was a couple years older, but still strikingly young when he claimed his first victim. We've talked about young teenagers murdering members of their families and even deeply disturbed children who carry out murderous fantasies. But typically, these kids are caught before their crimes escalated to serial killings. Legebokoff was resourceful enough to utilize the Highway of Tears and may have continued to get away with murder for a lot longer, if not for the movements shining a light on the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in Canada, and if not for the publicity of higher-profile cases like that of Nicole Hoare. The apprehension of Cody Legebokoff, however, is widely chalked up to chance.
During This Week in True Crime History, Rookie Constable Aaron Keller of the RCMP decided to pull over a pickup truck for a routine traffic stop. It was November 27, 2010, around 9:30 p.m., when Keller saw a black pickup pull onto Highway 27 from a remote logging road. The way the truck bounced along the remote road, it appeared the driver had been speeding. And come to think of it, it was a little curious that anyone would use that particular rural road at all this late in November. The weather was seasonably freezing, and there was nothing to see down there, particularly this late in the evening when all was quiet and dark. Keller got some inexplicably bad vibes and called for backup. He quietly tailed the 2004 GMC as he waited for another officer to arrive. As soon as he saw the patrol car pull in behind him, the 2 cops illuminated their emergency lights, signaling to the driver of the pickup to pull over. The driver, 20-year-old Cody Allen Legebokoff, was dangling his license and vehicle registration out of the open driver's side window. Strange, thought Keller. Usually when a driver gets pulled over, they are too nervous to get right down to business like that. Walking up to the driver's side window, Keller asked, "Where are you headed in such a hurry?" Cody, who was a burly guy with a baby face and shaggy blonde hair, told the constable he was on his way to his grandfather's house. Keller thought he looked barely old enough to have graduated from high school. He saw what he figured was probably a nick from shaving on Legebokoff's chin and then noticed droplets of blood on his thigh. Keller found it odd the young man was wearing shorts along with a long-sleeved sweater. It was almost minus 10 degrees Celsius that night, which is about 14 degrees Fahrenheit.
With a quick glance around the interior of the truck, Keller spotted an open can of beer behind the driver's seat. He told Legebokoff that the rule is when an officer sees an open container of alcohol, they have to search the truck. When he stepped out of the vehicle, Keller saw additional drops of blood on Cody's legs. Thinking fast to try to minimize any risks against the officer's safety, he suggested that Cody might prefer to wait in the back of his patrol car rather than standing on the side of the road in the cold. "Sounds good," he replied. Constable Keller noted that he had to search him before he could allow Cody to sit in the vehicle, as per normal police protocol. In the pockets of his shorts were a cell phone and a Leatherman brand multi-tool with several different blades. The tool was caked with blood. Legebokoff calmly explained that he had used the tool on a grouse earlier that day. Confronted with the idea that it was too much blood for a grouse, Cody added that he had also recently used it on a deer. As the second constable, KP Sidhu, began to search the vehicle, Constable Keller sat down with Cody Legebokoff in the back of his patrol car. With a bit of prodding, Cody delivered his first of several stories, explaining what exactly he had been up to that evening. Keller pointed to the blood droplets and pointed out that he had seen a small puddle of blood had accumulated on the mat of the driver's side of the pickup. Legebokoff said he and a friend had been hanging out in nearby Vanderhoof doing some hunting. His friend had shot a deer, but the deer ran off, so they ran after it, hoping to put it out of its misery. Asked if he had a valid hunting license, Cody said no. He admitted they had been poaching. Satisfied that they had grounds to arrest the man on a poaching charge, Keller left Cody in the back of the police car while he joined Constable Sidhu in searching the pickup. But first, he notified Cody that he would be calling a conservation officer with animal tracking skills to further investigate the matter.
In the truck, the RCMP officers found 2 crack pipes, a 4-pack of mudslide mixed drinks, and a 4-pack of White Russian mixed drinks, both with 2 bottles open and half drank. They found a pipe wrench caked with blood and snow and a backpack shaped like a monkey. Inside the monkey backpack, they found a wallet containing a health card bearing the name Lauren Dawn Leslie. As they ran some checks on the health card, Legebokoff grew restless. Keller went to him and explained he was going to be arrested for poaching under the Canada Wildlife Act. He didn't understand why they continued to investigate and why they continued to search his vehicle. He admitted that he understood that what he and his friend were doing was wrong, but he persisted, yeah, we were poaching, but it was the first time this season. Keller asked if he poached often, and Cody chuckled, yeah, I'm a redneck. It's what we do for fun. Cody said the crack pipes belonged to a friend. The cops told him he wouldn't be getting those back and that they would have to destroy them. Cody nodded. The officers stomped the crack pipes on the ground until they shattered. That's interesting that they would destroy
I thought
evidence.
It was weird, too, that they wouldn't just bring it back to the station with them or something. He said the pipe wrench had been used on the injured deer, saying he and his friend, quote, took turns until it was dead. When Conservation Officer Cameron Hill showed up to the site shortly before 11 p.m., Cody recounted his story, adding a bit to explain the fate of the deer. He alleged that he and his friend then loaded the deer's body into the back of the pickup and drove it away to dispose of it somewhere else. Officer Hill was not buying any of this. He'd been working in the area for over 3 decades and had never heard such an absurd story. He had never in his life heard of someone clubbing an injured deer with a wrench to put it out of its misery. Why not just shoot it again? And if they'd been out shooting deer, where was the rifle now? And why was Legebokoff wearing shorts? And why would a hunter load up a deer that they had poached only to dump its body in another location? He had never heard of anyone doing that either.
Officer Hill warned Cody that if he's the type of person that enjoys hurting animals to watch them struggle or beating animals to death, maybe he should seek help. I know, sighed Cody. I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to get better friends. Hill notified Legebokoff that he could test the blood on his legs and in his truck to see if they were in fact deer blood. They also planned to check with his friend to see if their stories matched. And they would work to track down the deer carcass where Cody claims they had left it. Throughout the informal interrogation, Cody kept calm and composed and readily answered every question posed to him. If it weren't that the facts just didn't add up, Hill admits he never would have suspected that anything was amiss. The RCMP kept Cody Legebokoff detained in the back of the police car while Officer Hill investigated the rural logging road where Keller first spotted his pickup truck. Though fresh snow continued to fall, the truck's tracks were still visible along the west side of the gravel pit, the truck having come to a stop in the pit's southwest corner.
Just to explain a bit for those who have not lived in rural Canada, I'm not sure if this goes on in remote areas of other countries too, but in Canada, folks flock to the gravel pits. In summer, couples, friends, and families will park their RVs on the side of the pit and just camp there for the weekend. It's not particularly scenic, but it's not fully booked either. And usually gravel pits do have relatively easy access to hunting grounds and fishing holes. Teens and 20-somethings pass long nights partying near gravel pits, with free parking for all. It wouldn't have been so unusual to see a self-professed redneck kid speeding out of a gravel pit at 9:30 p.m. in the summertime, but this kind of thing does not typically go down in the winter. Cameron Hill noted that ahead of where the pickup truck had stopped, there were two sets of footprints walking away. One set began at the driver's side door and the other on the passenger side. The two footprints were different sizes. They trailed on until they faded into a pile of snow that had clearly been disturbed. He noticed some drops of blood and impressions in the snow that looked like they were left by something being dragged. As the drag marks continued on, the snow grew darker, stained red with blood. At the end of the line, among the trees, was no deer. In the snow lay the body of a girl with her pants pulled down around her ankles. She had long blonde hair, matted with blood, and had been bludgeoned so badly in the face and head that she was unrecognizable. Hill called officers Keller and Sidhu to fill them in on his discovery. "Did you find the deer?" Keller asked. "No," Hill replied. "Well, what did you find?" Keller pressed. Cameron Hill paused. The worst case scenario.
Meanwhile, the RCMP had run checks on the name of Lauren Dawn Leslie. First, they called one of her emergency contacts, her father, Doug Leslie. "Is Lauren home?" they asked him. He told them she was with her mother. He was a bit concerned as to why they were calling, and they told him they found her ID card in a suspect's truck, but said they had no other information at the moment. They promised to call him once they did. They soon found that the 15-year-old girl had been reported missing by her mother, Donna Leslie, just hours earlier. Though obviously devastated to hear about her daughter's murder, Lauren's parents were ultimately relieved to hear that a suspect was in custody before her body was even discovered. Donna and Doug Leslie were separated but shared custody of Lauren. Lauren mostly lived with her mother in Vanderhoof, but spent a lot of time at her father's place too, where she had her own room. On November 27, 2010, Lauren was hanging out with her dad during the day, and around 3 p.m. she left his place to head to her mom's. They hung out watching TV in the early evening, and then Lauren told her mom she was going to meet a girlfriend for coffee. "Just don't be too late," Donna called out. As it got late and Lauren didn't come home, her mom reported her missing. Lauren's parents had described her as a fun and happy kid, despite being diagnosed with post-traumatic depression and medicated for bipolar disorder. She dreamt of becoming a forensic pathologist when she grew up. She spent lots of time chatting with friends on the internet, particularly on the social media site Nexopia. Lauren had been born with a condition that left her legally blind. She was completely blind in one eye and had 50% vision in the other eye. She loved swimming, tubing, and karate. Friends at school described her as quiet but never afraid to stand up for others. Bobby Duvall told CTV News that was her only thing. She always wanted people to be treated fairly and with respect. She was about peace, love, added Tori Lodge. At her funeral service, a passage was read from Lauren's diary. Quote, I hear the loneliness of people sitting in folding chairs at dances because they're not loud enough to be heard, but I hear them. Lauren's mom, Donna, said she cared so much about everybody else, and I don't know why somebody would do this to her. I've lost her, and this world is lost without her. Her dad, Doug, summed it up. She was an angel, and she still is, and she touched a lot of people.
Lauren Dawn Leslie had been sexually assaulted and died of blood loss and blunt force trauma. At 12:07 a.m. on November 28th, Cody Legebokoff was arrested for the murder of Lauren Dawn Leslie. Constable Sidhu informed him of his rights, noting that he was allowed to call a lawyer at this time and did not have to talk to them anymore without a lawyer present if he didn't want to. Though he continued to deny any involvement in Lauren's murder, he kept on talking. He was irate, several times spitting, "I did not murder anyone." He asked for his father. The police reminded him that he was an adult and was responsible for his own actions. And though he's allowed to telephone a lawyer, they wouldn't allow him to call anyone else at that point. Legebokoff admitted that the whole deer story was a fabrication and said that he wanted to explain what really happened. Cody alleged that he had found Lauren's body after she was already dead. Around this time, Doug Leslie showed up to the roadside traffic stop where Cody Legebokoff was in custody, demanding no BS. He needed to know what happened to his daughter. All I can tell you, began Constable Sidhu, is that we are investigating a homicide. Leslie broke down crying on the spot.
At the police station the next morning, Sergeant Greg Janicki, who had just arrived after driving 9 hours from Vancouver, brought Cody Legebokoff into an interrogation room for his first official interview. Cody elaborated on his most recent version of events. He was on his way home when he noticed some ATV tracks leading from a gravel pit just off the highway into a wooded area where he used to hunt. He followed the tracks until he noticed blood in the snow. Then he got out of his truck. He found a knife, a pipe wrench, and a backpack shaped like a monkey. He decided to keep the stuff. He followed the blood and tracks that looked like something was dragged in the snow and came across the body of Lauren Dawn Leslie. He described her face as, quote, bashed and bloody. I was scared shitless, he continued, so I got the hell out of there as fast as I could. Sergeant Janicki asked what kind of person would do something like that. Cody came back with, obviously not a good person. Cody started babbling about how he had a life and a good job and a girlfriend, and he didn't need to be getting mixed up in something like this. The cops called his girlfriend, Amy Vole, to come in for questioning. Cody explained that he'd never do anything to mess up things with Amy because she's the one. He spoke of having just invited her over for Thanksgiving dinner with his family, and said they were about to move in together. Eventually, they would get married and have children.
Cody spent some time in a holding cell, and interviews resumed again a few hours later. Another sergeant, Peter Tufik, swooped in to share some striking similarities between the murder of Lauren Leslie and another case, the murder of Cynthia Mays. 7 weeks prior, Cynthia's decomposing remains were found in LC Gunn Park, about an hour away from Vanderhoof. She was so badly beaten, you couldn't recognize her face. Her body was left with her pants pulled down around her ankles. Cynthia Mace was a sex worker struggling with addiction, and LC Gunn was a park known to be frequented by sex workers and their patrons. I don't pick up hookers, insisted Legebokoff. That's not who I am. Peter Tufik advised Cody not to be too shy to talk for fear of what they might find out. We are going to find out anyway, he asserted. He warned that an investigative team was going to go back over his whole life with a fine-tooth comb. They'd see every text he'd sent, every phone call, every place he went with his cell phone in his pocket, everywhere he drove. They would seize his computer, and see everyone he talked to online, read all of his instant messages and emails. They would swab every inch of his truck, his apartment, and compare his DNA against the database. Tufik was convinced that someone who would murder a girl like Lauren Leslie in such a brutal fashion had more than likely killed before, and told Cody as much. He suggested that Cody was trying to join the ranks of infamous Canadian serial killers like Willie Pickton, Russell Williams, and Clifford Olson. He carried on about how the cool thing about the Colonel Russell Williams, and the reason he isn't regarded as monstrous as the others, is because he came clean, told them where to find the bodies, and pleaded guilty. He was hoping to inspire a similar move from Legebokoff.
Cody's friends and family were incredulous and painted a picture of a perfectly normal, healthy, and happy young man. He was born in Fort St. James, British Columbia in 1990. He had a normal upbringing with loving parents and 2 siblings who he got along with. He had played hockey in high school and was popular. After he graduated, Cody got an apartment with 3 female friends in Prince George. He worked at a Ford dealership where he had worked his way up to a job in the parts department. He'd been dating his girlfriend, Amy, for a few months. He had never exhibited any sort of violence. No one had seen any reason to be concerned for Cody's mental health. When he got a chance to see his girlfriend, Amy, Cody Legebokoff insisted he never killed anyone and that he just wasn't raised like that. She said she believed him. RCMP Sergeant Paul Dodwell told Cody that Amy came in to hear what happened and she deserved to hear the truth from him. Cody's story shifted once more as he finally admitted to having met Lauren Leslie. He told Amy that he met Lauren on Nexopia and they exchanged numbers. Her profile said she was 16, but his profile shared his true age of 20. On Nexopia, Cody used the username of One Country Boy. He said he and Lauren met for the first time on November 27th when he picked her up in Vanderhoof. When he told her that he did cocaine before meeting up with Lauren, Amy was visibly shocked. More so when he admitted to having sex with Lauren, but you have to believe I did not kill this girl, Cody finished. Amy no longer knew what to believe. The Cody she knew would never use cocaine or cheat on her. If he was capable of all of that, what's to say he wasn't capable of murder? Ultimately, she decided she was not going to stand by Cody, severed ties with her boyfriend, and unceremoniously walked out of the police station.
Cody's new claim was that after going for a drive and having sex with Lauren in his truck, Lauren suddenly started slapping herself in the face and crying about how she hated her life. Cody said it freaked him out and that he realized Lauren obviously had problems. He said she jumped out onto the road and began hitting herself in the face with a pipe wrench that she found on the floor of his truck. Then, he said, she began stabbing herself in the neck with the knife. Lauren's family said that while she suffered from certain mental illnesses, she had never been suicidal and had never been known to self-harm. Asked if he blamed Lauren for the predicament he found himself in, Cody responded, quote, "I blame her for hitting herself in the fucking face." A thorough investigation determined that Cody's story of meeting Lauren Leslie on Nexopia was correct. Cody's DMs to Lauren usually started off lewd, and Lauren usually ignored the rude or sexual remarks he would make and changed the subject. On November 27th, the two had texted back and forth about meeting up for the first time. Cody told Lauren not to tell anybody. "We're just hanging out though, right?" Lauren wanted to confirm. "Nothing sexual." Cody reminded Lauren that he was of legal age to buy booze and asked if she wanted anything at the liquor store. She asked for mudslides. Lauren was seen waiting outside of her school in Vanderhoof, where she and Cody had agreed to meet. A witness also saw a man in shorts get out of a black pickup truck to talk to Lauren, who then got into his truck with him.
None of Lauren's wounds could have possibly been self-inflicted because the angle and close range she would be striking from would have never produced the blows with such force. The beating she sustained to the face and head alone would have been fatal, as would have the stab wounds to the neck. It would have been impossible for her to have done both to herself. Lauren's pants were pulled down, and it didn't happen by accident while being dragged because she had been wearing a belt. Her pants were clearly pulled down after her body had been dragged because no snow had accumulated inside of the pants. Confronted with the facts, Legebokoff didn't have much to offer. I hit her 2 times at the maximum, he said smugly. All I know is that I didn't kill her. Just as Sergeant Peter Tufik had forecasted, a lengthy investigation stretched into late 2011, connecting Cody Legebokoff to 3 additional murders: Cynthia Frances Mace, Natasha Lynn Montgomery, and Jill Stacy Sachenko.
35-year-old Cynthia Mace, who went by Cindy, was last seen on September 10, 2010. Cindy was Indigenous and had long struggled to get a diagnosis for her disabilities related to fetal alcohol syndrome, as the provincial and federal governments bickered over who should be responsible for the medical care of First Nations people. Cindy graduated from a private school, as her sister Judy describes it, against all odds. She was an innocent. She had dreams and aspirations for her life. However, she fell victim to a drug when her cousin told her to try something that would make her feel good, Judy said. She was trusting. Even when Cindy's struggle with addiction saw her living on the streets and resorting to sex work, she faithfully attended Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, and she always called her family. Cynthia moved to Edmonton with a boyfriend and got trapped in an abusive relationship. She became pregnant. Determined to battle her addiction and build a good life for her baby, she attended treatment centers in Vancouver and Prince George. After she gave birth, Cynthia's baby was taken and placed in the foster care system. The last day she was seen, she was faxing in all of her paperwork to start the process of getting this child back into her care, Judy Mace said to Alaska Highway News. She didn't get the support she needed to ensure she could be a healthy parent. That alone put the last nail in her coffin. Cynthia died of blunt force trauma to the head and penetrating wounds. She had a hole in her shoulder. Her jaw and cheekbone were broken. Injuries to her neck were consistent with somebody having stomped on it. Her body was found a month after it had been dumped in an advanced state of decomposition. Cynthia's DNA was found on a pickaxe seized from Cody's apartment, as well as on a sock found on the floor of his truck and on a sweater he was wearing when he was arrested.
Wow. 23-year-old Natasha Lynn Montgomery was last seen leaving a friend's house in Prince George on August 31st, 2010, and was reported missing shortly thereafter. She had just been released from jail a few weeks earlier, and though family members say she lived a, quote, high-risk lifestyle, it wasn't like her to go very long without contacting her 2 children. Natasha was an Indigenous woman, originally from Quesnel, British Columbia. It has been reported that Natasha struggled with drug addiction and dabbled in sex work. Natasha's body has never been found, but her DNA was discovered on several items around Legebokoff's apartment, including on his bed sheets and comforter, a pair of shorts, some shirts, and an axe. Though she was declared legally dead in 2012, Natasha's mother, Luann Montgomery, has said, "It's not over for me. I still don't have Natasha back, and I want to remind the public to keep an eye out for her remains."
35-year-old mother of 6, Jill Stacy Sachenko, was last seen on October 9, 2009. Her body was discovered 4 days later, partially buried in a gravel pit off Otway Road on the outskirts of Prince George. She was Legebokoff's first victim, who he murdered when he was just 19 years old. Jill's blood was found on a sofa removed from Legebokoff's apartment. Cody's 3 roommates testified that the sofa was indeed Cody's and that they had helped him move it out of the apartment they shared into the apartment he was living in when he was arrested. The roommates recalled coming home after the Thanksgiving long weekend and finding a blood stain the size of a melon on the sofa. Confronting Cody, he claimed that he fell asleep on the couch with a nosebleed. The explanation was convincing because the roommates had recently discovered Cody to be using cocaine, which caused a bit of a stir among the old friends who had grown up together in Fort St. James. Cody's roommates also confirmed that he would regularly meet women on Nexopia and invite them back to the apartment. Sachenko was a sex worker who client-turned-caregiver Jim Giller was helping to kick her drug habit when she disappeared.
In October of 2011, Cody Allen Legebokoff was formally charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. His trial was originally set to begin in September of 2013, but was delayed until June of 2014. The court heard that Cody frequented sex workers, often using them to get drugs. He regularly used crystal meth and cocaine. One sex worker took the stand to detail the relationship she had with Legebokoff, saying they had been dating for months and often hung out just to talk and cuddle. I would wager that Amy Vole was also unaware of this relationship. Legebokoff stuck to his story about Lauren Leslie freaking out and hitting herself in the face with a pipe wrench, then stabbing herself in the neck. He said that his reaction to the fear the situation sparked in him was to hit her a couple of times to quiet her down, and then drag her body into the woods so no one would find her body and associate her death with him. He had a life that he didn't want to jeopardize.
Investigators and forensic experts surmised that Cody had killed his first victim, Jill Stachenko, when his roommates were out of town visiting family for Thanksgiving. The roommates also testified that they had noticed an axe propped up against the wall beside Cody's bed and asked him about it. Cody quipped, "It's scary sleeping down in the basement." He offered an alternate version of the story of Jill Stachenko's murder, starting a few weeks before the two met. Speaking of a drug-fueled party in town, Cody continued, "And that is when I met X." He claimed to have met a drug dealer who he had decided to refer to only as X because he refused to, quote, "go down as a rat." X allegedly had 2 acquaintances who Cody called Y and Z. It was at a raucous party at Cody's shared flat while his roommates were away that X attacked Jill with a lead pipe, killing her. Cody helped the man drag her body into the laundry room, and then he says the men used his truck to transport her body to the gravel pit. Cody described having consensual sex with Jill before she was attacked. But prosecutors say it's plain to see that Cody's encounter with Jill Stachenko was sexual assault. And sorry, this is really graphic and disturbing. Just another heads up. His semen had been discovered inside of her anus, which was badly bruised and injured, clear signs of assault. It was also found inside her vagina, along with a tampon, which the victim surely would have removed first had the act been consensual. The bit about Jill Stachenko being struck with a pipe didn't add up either. The amount of blood on the sofa and the amount of blood loss from Jill's body couldn't have been caused by a beating with a blunt instrument. Legebokoff went on to detail the murders of Cynthia Mace and Natasha Montgomery at the hands of X, Y, and Z. "I didn't kill anybody," Cody insisted, "but I was there."
Those that knew Cody didn't think he fit the bill of a typical serial killer, but they may not have had the whole picture. Cody was a hockey player, which meant he very well could have sustained an undiagnosed brain injury. Hockey also could have served as an outlet for Cody's aggression, so while his friends and family didn't see him exhibit any signs of violence, that doesn't mean there were no signs. Legebokoff used drugs, which we know can exacerbate any mental health issues. While he had no diagnoses, Cody's coolness during his arrest, interrogations, and trial hinted at a disordered personality. Cody had described loving and nurturing parents who treated him with respect. The Legebokoffs were a happy and close-knit family. Some might assume that it takes a history of childhood abuse off the table, but parents aren't the only possible predators. Any combination of the above could have contributed to a predisposition towards violent crime, and in particular, serial killings. Though we may never know what it was that drove Cody to kill, Redditors speculating at an antisocial personality disorder deliver a pretty convincing argument. Cody attempted to plead guilty to 3 counts of second-degree murder, but his plea was rejected. Supreme Court Justice Glenn Perrette confirmed that even if the jury believed Legebokoff's tall tales, they could still find him guilty of first-degree murder. He explained that Cody's actions still constituted first-degree murder even if X, Y, and Z did the killing, because Cody testified that he had provided the killers with their murder weapons. In Cody's testimony, he described handing X a pipe to use on Jill Stachenko, giving Y a pickaxe to kill Cynthia Mace, and passing a knife to Z, which Z then used to slash the throat of Natasha Montgomery. A logical conclusion would be that if the story is true, Legebokoff aided in the killings by providing the weapons, knowing exactly what they were going to be used for. Perret added that by refusing to provide names of the parties described as X, Y, and Z, Cody has prevented the police and the Crown from verifying the story and indeed their existence.
On September 11, 2014, Cody Allen Legebokoff was convicted of all 4 counts of first-degree homicide. He was sentenced to 4 concurrent terms of life in prison with no parole for 25 years. Supreme Court Justice Glenn Perret also had Legebokoff added to the sex offender registry, stating that his crimes were sexually motivated, he sexually assaulted all 4 of his known victims during their attacks, and degraded his victims' bodies. Perret said, quote, "He lacks any shred of empathy or remorse. He should never be allowed to walk among us again." Pressed about the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women and the Highway of Tears, Canadian Prime Minister at the time, Stephen Harper, shrugged it off. "It isn't really high on our radar, to be honest," he has said. Harper insinuated that if Indigenous women are in crisis, it's an Indigenous issue.
Yikes.
Yeah. Quote, "Obviously, there is a lack of respect for women and girls on reserves. So if the guys grew up believing that women have no rights, that is how they're treated." End quote. He implied that the risk against Native women came solely from Native men, disregarding men from other demographics who target vulnerable Indigenous women and girls. Canadians called for a national inquiry, and Harper dismissed it, making light of the ongoing issues. He suggested policing to be stepped up on reserves, but at the same time made massive budget cuts. In his summary, Justice Perret said, "It is a mistake, in my view, to limit the seriousness of this issue and to pretend, as some do, that policing is an answer, when the circumstances of this case raise questions about the effectiveness of that process. We simply must do better, especially where the commitment to policing is reflected in an 84% cut to the budget of the Highway of Tears Task Force," which is just despicable.
Yeah.
In February of 2016, Legebokoff filed an unsuccessful appeal. Originally imprisoned at Kent Institution, the only maximum security facility in the Pacific region, Cody was controversially relocated in 2019 to the Warkworth Institution, a medium security prison facility in Trent Hills, Ontario, where he resides today. Cody Legebokoff will be eligible for parole in 2035, when he is 45 years old.
Nope.
Yeah, no.
Not going to happen.
No. Please do not. No one's going to support that.
And I take it, even in prison, he's never confessed?
No, he's never confessed. And that is what is just so disrespectful and disgusting about this whole thing. Because, like, he constantly was called on his bullshit. And every time he just had a new, "Oh, well, actually it was this," and just a new lie every single time, which like the cop said that was talking about the various Canadian serial killers and the differences between them. One thing that makes people handle these stories a little better and be able to heal and get over them is that the perpetrator admits their wrongdoing and pleads guilty and does the time. I especially don't think that Legebokoff should ever be let out of jail without confessing, but especially without directing anyone towards the body that had never been found. Like, at the very least, he should have that information from the supposed X, Y, and Z. So
yeah, it's so upsetting. It's just like, what absurd explanations, because would you maybe have like some reasonable doubt if Lauren hadn't been found first, and if it was clear that the alleged drug dealers were obviously not there?
Yeah. It was 2 sets of footprints.
So then it's like, okay, was this, like they did find a meth pipe or a crack pipe, and like they found like paraphernalia in the car. So it's like, was this like some kind of drug situation gone wrong? But it's like clearly they weren't there. Clearly Lauren did not beat herself to death with a pipe. Like
that's just
like
the most
absolutely absurd.
Yeah, that's the most ludicrous story anyone could provide for how somebody got beaten. Like, and it's funny that that's the story that he never even changed once he got X, Y, and Z involved. Yeah. I guess he figured it wouldn't make sense to say they had anything to do with her because of, like I say, the 2 sets of footprints and whatever.
Wouldn't have been there. Yeah.
But still just, I don't know what he was thinking, insisting that she did that to herself.
Yeah, it's just so upsetting for these families to not have the resolution that they need. It's like, nobody is buying your BS story. Like, just come out with it. Like, I guess he just doesn't care, but like, it's just so upsetting for them to have to, like never get the full truth of what happened and to never be able to locate their loved one's body. Yeah. It's just horrific.
I also feel like I would be feeling pretty disturbed if I had been a friend or acquaintance of Cody's, because I know like they were all saying, oh, he seemed like a normal guy, but like, wouldn't that be all the more disturbing to find out that every emotion this guy ever put out there was like fake and acted out, and that he literally is just a cold, unfeeling. Obviously, there's no better explanation for how he could act the way he did. He just.
So upsetting. Like, I'm glad that Amy at least got away. I'm glad that she did not buy into his lies and just, turned around out of that jailhouse and like walked the other way. Good for her.
Yeah. So what are you watching this week?
Being sick, I mostly just watched a bunch of like fluffy Christmas kinds of things, but I did watch one, like sort of murdery show. I watched Dead to Me.
Oh, is it the end of Dead to Me?
Yes.
Okay.
It's the final season, and I will give no spoilers, but just say that they wrapped it up so well. Like Amazing. They gave a lot of thought to that. I feel like it's so rare to be happy with the end of a show because it's so hard to say goodbye to your favorite characters. And sometimes the writers don't know that the end is coming and they just have to like wrap it up before they're ready. But this was very like thoughtful and beautiful. You will laugh, you will cry. Aww. Like it's just so well done.
Oh, that's nice. That's great to hear that there's a good wrap up to that. I've been seeing a lot about Christina Applegate and her more recent diagnosis with MS, and how that is going to decline, and it's so sad to read about. But I guess it's nice to at least see that her last piece of work is nicely wrapped up and really well received. She deserves that.
Yeah, and I have not seen any complaints about it. It's like, if you liked the first 2 seasons, I believe you will like this season. Wait, is it 3 or 4 seasons?
Oh God, I don't even know.
Maybe I'm wrong about that, but whatever.
If you liked the first one,
yes, if you liked the previous seasons, you will love it. Like it's so beautiful. It's so sad to see her career needing to come to an end. Yeah. Like so young and feeling like this is kind of like peak for her too. Yeah. Like I mean, she's done so many wonderful things, but I think this show is just so good. Like it's so freaking good. Like this is definitely my favorite project that I've ever seen her in. So and I love her in everything.
But she's always great. Yeah, it's true.
Mm-hmm. So funny. She's so funny. Mm-hmm. I will give like one tiny spoiler that there's a very funny drug scene. Okay. Like, get ready to just like laugh your ass off. Like I love a good like run mushrooms, run this, whatever kind of thing. Yeah. Like, and it can be done like very poorly. Like probably the best I've ever seen one done was Grace and Frankie. And this rivals that. Like it's very good. It's very like, I can hear colors, like something like Grace and Frankie. This
is great. I love that because those kinds of scenes are just so hilarious in real life as well. My favorite one that I ever recall hearing about is when the cop and his wife ate some weed brownies. Did you hear about that? And then they called 911. And
Oh, no.
they called 911 and the cop was like, I think we're dead. And like, it was so funny.
I've
like,
been there.
Yeah, I've definitely been there too. I believe I have died.
Is this the afterlife?
Yeah. Oh my God.
I hope not.
What a
I hope
feeling.
it's not like that.
No.
How about you? Have you watched anything?
Well, nothing true crimey, really. I did watch a weird documentary that's like, I guess, almost true crime adjacent, which is Pepsi, Where's My Jet? Did you see or hear about that?
I've been hearing about this, but I don't know what it is.
It's so dumb. So it's basically in the 90s when Pepsi was giving away points with every purchase, and then you could like collect them and buy things like a big screen TV and like whatever. They made a joke that if you did like tens of thousands of points or whatever, you could get a jet. And
oh my God.
This kid just like decided to be
I'm going to do
the
it.
stubborn brat to end all stubborn brats and be like, I know how to get this many points and I know it's economical because I only have to buy these many thousands of Pepsis and that costs less than a jet and they're going to give me my damn jet. And he just like took them to the cleaners and was like, you said there was a jet. And like, maybe if it wasn't just like a white dude, I would feel differently about it. But I'm like,
that's
how
true.
Fucking entitled. Give me my jet. You said there's a jet. Like, you can't even make a joke. So whatever.
Right.
It was annoying.
Like, if it were somebody even vaguely likable, I'd be like, Pepsi can afford a jet.
Yeah,
give the kid a jet. But
it's true. Yeah.
Like, we all know how I feel about capitalism. Like,
right,
give everybody a jet.
Yeah.
Pepsi.
How many doors.
Jets?
Give away all the jets. Close your doors. The end. Pepsi sucks anyway.
That's funny.
And then I watched Smile finally, which you talked about before.
Ooh, yeah.
And that was real creepy and fun.
Did you like it?
I liked it. I'm not 100% sure that I loved the end, but I'm not sure what I expected to happen either. So without spoiling it, I don't know. The ending is questionable. What do you all think?
Yeah, let's talk about the end.
Yeah.
I did like it.
Yeah, I liked it.
But I could see why you wouldn't.
What do you think was the scariest visual?
That's a good question. You know, I've already told the story about how I literally screamed.
Yeah, I was wondering
so loud
when you
people
screamed.
Next to me. It was just a cheesy jump scare. It was maybe like the first quarter of the movie. So it was like so early on. I think it was just the anticipation of like, something's going to happen, something's going to happen.
Yeah.
I often like scream. I don't know how many scary movies we've watched together, Angelina, but I am a screamer. Like, yeah. I'll give it like every once in a while. And that's kind of just what I did. You know, like it just got me. Mm-hmm. And then I was like so worried about screaming again that I was like trying not to look at the screen when I knew something scary was going to happen, just in case. I was like, if I scream again, people might like ask me to leave.
Yeah. You get like escorted out of the movie theater.
Right. Like it was a real scream. Mm-hmm. But I can't remember. It was like in the beginning, maybe even something with the cat. It was, I don't know, before the birthday party.
I think like it was like very unrealistic, but still somehow very creepy. Was like, I'm going to tell this story without too many spoilers as well. But like when she figured that her sister was coming beside her car to talk to her, and then a weird thing happened with the very tall sister. That was creepy.
Right.
But yeah, so it was
there
good.
were some very good visuals, but you know, I get it. Like just the concept of like smiles are a little creepy in general.
Smiles are unsettling. It's true.
They are.
Don't
and it's
trust
like in
smiling
nature,
people.
like other animals don't smile. Like the act of showing your teeth is a threat. Like you're baring your teeth. So I think about that a lot. Like I'm always smiling at my dog and I'm like, and like he looks threatened.
Yeah. I feel like
very unsettled.
I feel like dogs, like pet dogs, do kind of smile sometimes, though that is a threatening motion towards them. I think they kind of do it to you, maybe because like, I don't know, they're used to our weirdness or something, but like there's virtually zero other possible instances in the animal kingdom where you would see a creature smiling. So yeah, it is a strange thing that we do. What the fuck?
It is very strange.
We're
my
weird.
husband likes to talk about some British actors don't smile but bare their teeth. I won't name names.
I was going to say, I guarantee you he said that about me.
No. Honestly, he hasn't.
I feel like that's something that would be said about me. And Rick, we like have joked about the, I guess, like British sort of coldness that I inherited part of from my family. So I remember like the one when we were like doing photos and he was like, smile. And then he goes, Angelina, I know you're trying really hard. I'm just like, yeah.
He gives me a hard time about it too. He's that guy.
Yeah. It is funny though. I do, poke fun at that whole weird British coldness too. I think that's the funniest thing about having British people in my family.
Yeah. And I mean, on the like opposite, they love to joke about like how obnoxiously smiley Americans are and how fake it is, which I can't deny. Like especially reading this book we're reading right now for book club, which is like the Southern Guide to Slaying Vampires. There's this very
talking about
like
Southern hospitality,
smile like everything's all right, like kind of like mentality, and like Americans really smile excessively.
There you go. There's like the polar opposites of the smile scale.
Yeah.
The Brits and the Americans. So there you go.
We love baring our teeth.
And the last thing that I watched is a cartoon that is actually not meant for adults, but is still very entertaining. It has like a rating of like for 7-year-olds, but it's called Dead End Paranormal Park. And it's a bunch of sort of strange creatures that get a job at a paranormal theme park. And it's cute. I like it. It's a good palate cleanser because it's light and fluffy and not, scary or dark, but very cute. Well, I guess that's enough murder for one week. But maybe this week you're feeling like you need just a little bit more murder. You can always find us on the OG murdermurder.news for the latest breaking true crime news articles every day of the week.
You can also find us on Instagram at Murder News, on TikTok at Murder News, on Twitter at Murder News, and on Facebook, you'll find us by searching for Murder News.
And if you search Murder News on Facebook, our little group should also pop up. You'll want to join us to stay in the loop about any upcoming events and to RSVP to our next book club meeting, which is this Sunday, November 27th. We've been reading the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix, and we can't wait to chat with you about it.
Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast if you've enjoyed today's episode. And be sure to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform so you never miss an episode.
Have an amazing week.
Bye, spooky friends.